How beautiful words control the masses. Orwell explained we all believe we're thinking for ourselves, that our beliefs are ours, that the words in our heads are original, pure, unfiltered. But what if I told you that most of what you think isn't truly yours? What if the very language you use to define your reality, your opinions, your values, your beliefs has already been shaped by someone else long before you even formed the thought? George Orwell understood this better than almost anyone. He wasn't just warning us about authoritarianism, he was warning us about language itself, how it can be weaponized, romanticized, and disguised to control entire populations without a single bullet fired. Let's be honest, we love beautiful words. They inspire us, they move us, they make us cry, laugh, fight, and fall in love. But that's exactly the danger, because the more a word stirs emotion, the less we question its meaning. Orwell knew this. In his essay, Politics and the English Language, he exposed how politicians, corporations, and ideologues use elegant language not to clarify, but to conceal. They don't lie directly. They wrap lies in poetic phrases. They don't say, "We killed civilians." They say, "We neutralized threats." They don't say, "We're poor." They say, "We're fiscally challenged." They don't say, "We're watching you." They say, "Your data helps us serve you better." It's not just what is said, it's how it's said. Words carry weight. They shape how we see the world. If I say freedom fighter, you think hero. If I say terrorist, you think villain. But what if both are pointing to the same person, depending on who's speaking? The labels are different, but the person is the same. You see, the masses aren't controlled with force, they're controlled with framing. And the most powerful tool of framing is language. Here's where Orwell's genius comes in. In 1984, the dystopia doesn't begin with tanks or guns. It begins with newspeak, language designed to limit thought. In Orwell's world, if you can't say the word freedom, you can't think the idea of freedom. If the word rebellion doesn't exist, you can't organize one. If truth becomes doublethink, then contradiction becomes normal and logic collapses. But the terrifying brilliance of newspeak is that it doesn't just censor your mouth, it rewires your mind. And we're already living in the early versions of it. Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights. Think about modern political discourse. Listen carefully. How often are we told not to offend? How often do we hear phrases like weapons of mass destruction, collateral damage, enhanced interrogation, thought leader, empowerment, safe spaces? These phrases sound harmless, even noble, but if you peel them back, they often mask brutal realities or vague ideas that are never clearly defined. And that's the point. When words are vague, they become hard to challenge. You can't fight what you can't name. Ask yourself, when was the last time you repeated a phrase without really examining it? But something like, "Stay in your lane," or "Trust the science," or "Speak your truth." These are modern mantras. They sound wise, but are they? Do they encourage thought or shut it down? Do they clarify or simplify beyond recognition? Orwell's nightmare wasn't just that governments would ban books, it was that people would stop needing books, that we'd become so hypnotized by slogans, hashtags, and buzzwords that we'd forget how to think in full sentences. And here's the scariest part. You don't even realize it's happening. Propaganda doesn't feel like propaganda when it's in your own language. It feels like common sense. It feels like morality. It feels like truth. That's how deep it goes. The words you use shape what you're even capable of thinking. That's why Orwell wrote with such urgency. He wasn't just writing fiction, he was writing a warning. But let me ask you something personal. How many of your beliefs are built on words someone else gave you? How many of your opinions are inherited from culture, media, friends, phrases you've never actually dissected? What if your entire worldview is structured not around reality, but around the language that's been fed to you since you were a child? And what happens when you try to break free? You quickly realize that people don't just defend ideas. They defend the words that hold those ideas together. If you question the word justice, people assume you're against fairness. If you challenge the word progress, they assume you're backward. If you reject unity, they call you divisive. Beautiful words become tracts because they carry moral weight, emotional power, and social approval. But rarely do people stop and ask, what do these words actually mean? And who benefits when we stop asking? This is why Orwell matters now more than ever, because the control of language has become global, digital, and algorithmic. And unless we become radically conscious of the words we use and the ones we're told to use, we risk becoming fluent in our own manipulation. The machinery of manipulation, how institutions weaponize language to manufacture consent. We like to think of language as neutral, as a tool we use to express truth. But that's only part of the story. In the hands of powerful institutions, governments, corporations, media platforms, and even educational systems, language becomes something else entirely. It becomes an instrument of influence, a mechanism of control, a way to shape not just what people believe, but what they are capable of believing. Orwell warned us about this, not as a hypothetical future, but as a creeping reality already in motion. What he saw and what we must confront now is the systematic engineering of consent through carefully constructed language, not by force, but by slow, subtle persuasion. You see, the most dangerous form of control is the one that looks like freedom. The most effective propaganda doesn't feel like propaganda. It feels like culture. It feels like education. It feels like safety. Institutions have learned this. They've learned that if they want to shape public behavior, they don't need to issue threats. They don't need to censor every book or arrest every dissenter. But all they need to do is control the narrative. And the first step to controlling the narrative is controlling the words people are allowed to use. Let's take the political realm first. Governments around the world have adopted the art of what Orwell called political language. Language designed to make lies sound truthful and murder respectable. When a government launches a war, it doesn't say, we're invading a country to secure oil and power. It says, we're engaging in a peacekeeping mission. When it spies on its citizens, it doesn't say, we're violating your privacy. It says, we're protecting national security. The brutality is sanitized. The truth is softened. The public, distracted by the beauty of the words, nods in approval. But this isn't limited to governments. Corporations have mastered this technique too. They don't sell addictive products, they promote lifestyle choices. They don't exploit workers, they empower global communities. But they don't pollute the earth, they offset carbon footprints. Marketing is no longer just about selling, it's about shaping identity through language. And the more poetic the language, the less you question the product or the cost. Browse, even education, which we often treat as sacred, is not immune. In fact, it may be the most powerful institution when it comes to linguistic control, because it doesn't just tell people what to think, it teaches them how to think, or more accurately, how not to think beyond approved boundaries. Students are taught to repeat the right terms, not to question them. Terms like equity, diversity, inclusion, privilege, harm, safety, and progress are used as shields. Beautiful, moral-sounding shields that prevent honest debate. If you challenge the meaning of the word, you're seen as attacking the value it represents. But Orwell warned of this very trap. When language becomes a moral weapon, disagreement becomes heresy. And now in the digital age, the stakes are even higher.
Algorithms don't just show you what you like. They show you what you're allowed to like. Social media platforms filter language constantly. They ban certain words, shadow ban certain voices, and elevate others. But who decides what gets through? Who defines what's misinformation? What's hate speech? What's unsafe? The answer is always the same: those in power. And when power controls the vocabulary, it controls the conversation. And when it controls the conversation, it controls the culture. And when it controls the culture, it controls you. But here's the most unsettling truth. We participate in this manipulation, often unconsciously. We self-censor. We adjust our language to fit the acceptable norms. We avoid certain phrases not because they are wrong, but because they are risky. Words become loaded. Speech becomes strategy. And slowly our thoughts shrink to fit the cage of social approval. Orwell called it thought crime, not because we fear the state, but because we fear each other. We fear being misunderstood. We fear being labeled. So we choose safety over clarity, acceptance over honesty, silence over truth. And this is how beautiful words become chains. Not because we are forced to wear them, but because they are handed to us in velvet boxes. Because they sound good. Because they feel right. But once we accept them without question, we surrender something deeper than speech. We surrender our ability to think. So ask yourself this: what words do you use every day without examining them? Which terms do you repeat because they're popular, not because you've defined them for yourself? And more importantly, what conversations are you not having because the words to describe them have been quietly removed? We aren't just living in Orwell's world, we're updating it. Unless we take radical responsibility for the language we consume and the language we create, we will continue to be manipulated not by obvious lies, but by beautiful ones. Silencing truth with elegance? Why the most dangerous lies are the ones that sound the best. Here's a chilling idea. The most dangerous lies are not the ones we recognize as lies. They're the ones that slip past our defenses because they sound good, because they sound right, because they use the exact kind of phrasing that makes us feel wise, empathetic, and morally superior. Orwell didn't fear the brute force of totalitarianism as much as he feared its seduction. The way tyranny could dress itself up in beautiful words, wrap itself in noble ideas, and convince entire populations that obedience was enlightenment and silence was virtue. That's the real genius of control. It doesn't need to hide, it just needs to sound better than the truth. Think about how this works in real life. When someone speaks plainly, directly, and honestly, without dressing their thoughts in fashionable language, we often call them rude, insensitive, even dangerous. But when someone avoids all hard truths, cloaks their speech in euphemisms, and flatters our emotions, we call them thoughtful, respectful, or professional. Why? Because we've been trained to associate discomfort with danger and elegance with truth.
But elegance is not truth, and comfort is not clarity. In fact, the most profound truths are often the most uncomfortable ones. And yet we silence them gladly if they don't come wrapped in the right packaging. This is especially true in how we talk about issues that matter most: justice, freedom, identity, progress. These are sacred ideas. And because they're sacred, they're also the easiest to manipulate. If you want to silence someone today, you don't need to argue with them. You just need to accuse them of violating one of these sacred terms. Accuse someone of being anti-progress or anti-inclusion or on the wrong side of history. And you don't have to address their argument at all. You've already won.
because no one wants to be cast as the villain in a story told with beautiful words. But the truth doesn't care about your feelings. It doesn't care about your comfort. And it certainly doesn't care about how attractive the lie sounds. That's what makes it so hard to accept. We want truth to be poetic, but more often, it's raw, it's messy, it's offensive, and yet it's the only thing that can actually set us free. That's the paradox Orwell was pointing to. The more we demand that our truths be beautiful, the more vulnerable we become to lies that are. And the terrifying part is that most people don't even realize it's happening. They think they're thinking critically, when what they're really doing is feeling emotionally affirmed. They think they're standing for truth, when they're actually just standing for what sounds good. And this isn't just an intellectual failure, it's a moral one. Because when we allow ourselves to be controlled by beautiful lies, we become complicit in the suppression of truth. Let me ask you something difficult. When was the last time you changed your mind? Not because something sounded better, but because it was better. When was the last time you heard something that made you deeply uncomfortable, but you chose to explore it anyway because you suspected it might be true? Or have you surrounded yourself with elegant language, safe ideas, and gentle lies that keep you intellectually warm, but spiritually asleep? We all want to be right. We all want to be liked. But if those desires become more important than truth, we're lost. And the worst part, we won't even know we're lost.
Because we'll be surrounded by applause, surrounded by people telling us how enlightened we are, how compassionate, how evolved. But evolution isn't about repeating the most popular words. It's about daring to speak the ones that no one else will, and the ones that pierce through illusion, the ones that don't sound beautiful at first, but are beautiful in the end because they are true. And that's what Orwell was trying to remind us. The truth is not always nice, but it is always necessary. Escape the cage, reclaiming thought in a world that rewards obedience. If we've learned anything from Orwell, it's this. Of the most effective form of control isn't physical, it's psychological. It's not the cage you can see, but the one you don't. It's the gradual erosion of your ability to think independently, masked as progress, politeness, or collective well-being. In a world that rewards obedience, true thought becomes rebellion. And in a culture that elevates conformity through beautiful, unquestioned language, reclaiming your mind becomes an act of quiet revolution. We've seen how language can be twisted, how institutions weaponize it, how society prefers elegance over honesty, how even our own minds betray us by seeking comfort over clarity. But now the question becomes, how do we escape this? How do we reclaim the ability to think freely in a world that subtly punishes you for doing so? The first step is radical awareness. You have to start noticing the words that shape your thoughts. Every slogan, every headline, every social script you've internalized. Ask yourself, what does this really mean? Who benefits if I accept this without question? This isn't about becoming a cynic. It's about becoming conscious. It's about refusing to let language do the thinking for you. Because once you see the manipulation, even in the subtlest forms, you can begin to resist it, not with rage, but with reason. But awareness isn't enough. You also have to practice intellectual courage. That means entertaining ideas that scare you, reading things you disagree with, listening to people who challenge you, not because they're always right, but because truth doesn't live in echo chambers. It lives in friction, in debate, in the uncomfortable space between certainty and doubt. The moment you only surround yourself with agreeable language and agreeable people, you've already begun to lose the fight. And perhaps most importantly, you have to reclaim language for yourself. You have to redefine the words that matter,
Instead of letting others tell you what freedom means, define it yourself. Instead of accepting what justice, truth, progress, or love are supposed to mean, ask, what do these words mean to me, based on experience, reflection, and evidence, not just fashion or fear. Because when you own your language, you begin to own your thought. And when you own your thought, you become almost impossible to control. But be warned, this path isn't easy. You will be misunderstood. You will be called names. People will accuse you of being contrarian, insensitive, or even dangerous. Not because you are, but because you've stepped outside the narrative. Because you've chosen truth over approval. That's the price of freedom. Not the kind found in constitutions or slogans, but the deeper kind, the freedom of the mind. So let me ask you one final question. Are you thinking your own thoughts, or are you just repeating someone else's phrases? Are your beliefs the result of lived inquiry or comfortable inheritance? Because if you don't define your words, someone else will. And once they do, they've already begun to define you. Orwell didn't write to depress us. He wrote to awaken us, to jolt us out of our intellectual slumber. Not so we would live in fear of oppression, but so we would recognize how often we participate in it when we don't question, when we don't speak, when we don't think. The cage is real, but the key has always been within reach. Use it. Break the spell. Think clearly. Speak honestly. Resist beautifully. And most of all, never let the elegance of a word blind you to the truth it may be hiding.